have even been more when it launched its SPAC. It's kind of special. It's kind of like a type of IPO, but not technically an IPO. Just collapsed to zero into bankruptcy. This was actually pumped by all of Wall Street. They told you to buy it, said it was the greatest company in the world. Its shares have collapsed 98% this year. All the shareholders have been wiped out and liquidated to zero. So it's just basically a carcass of a skeleton now. Just keep in mind, this was like a multi-billion-dollar company that Wall Street was pumping. I always tell you stocks can go to zero. Well, many of them are going to go to zero very, very soon. Let's get to this New York Times article because banks are now closing people's bank accounts down. Many believe for religious and or political reasons and or other discriminatory practices. So again, I just want you to think about, like, number one, this is terrible, but number two, just how evil these big banks are. Like, they're literally involved with like Jeffrey Epstein and trafficking rings, and they're discriminating based on race. And now they're being accused, after settling, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of lawsuits, of just flagrantly closing people's accounts for no reason as they build us into a CBDC society of which they're going to have total control of the new system and everything I've been talking about and sharing with you guys for such a long time. It says here, but then comes the telltale pause and shift in tone. Per your account agreement, we can close your account for any reason at any time. So basically, there's all these Americans throughout the United States that are just having their accounts closed now. They don't know why. They're never told. We've seen this at PayPal, for example, targeting conservatives, conservative Americans, Republicans, Christians, and Trump supporters in recent years. That is absolutely factually happened. It's happened to a lot of individuals that I personally know, actually. Here's a lady, had her account closed. She has a beautiful American flag. Back in the background, she runs just kind of a blue collar, I think it is restaurant/bar, account closed, gone forever. So we're noticing this too, that not only are they closing people's accounts, but they're closing branches down. Here's a report also says 19 Republican states accuse JP Morgan Chase of closing bank accounts and discriminating against customers due to their religious or political beliefs. So that was just another article proving that point again. So massive collapse is coming. You need to get your money out of the banks. I think you understand this. This is the biggest scam, pump and dump. They're going to crash Wall Street to zero, reset the system, use the war in Israel as cover, use the new Middle Eastern war as cover, as they probably also open up a draft. In fact, many are noticing that the U.S. Army, I'll play this video in a minute, all of a sudden is going from like its woke marketing practices to only showing white people. I'm not going to really give my opinion, but I'm just curious yours. But usually they've been showing like a lot of diversity in their advertising. But now, as this person was pointing out here, named Elijah, he says, there's only one black woman in the U.S. Army ad and barely visible behind text, but white guys everywhere. I wonder what's about to go down. And then Wall Street Silver says, all white guys in the U.S. Army ads again, we're definitely going to war. So here you can see this ad. I'll just play it from the beginning. Yep, your greatest victories, guys, are never achieved alone. Now, I pray for our military. I love our military, love America. Support the troops, number one. I mean, that's my biggest harp, is that the American government isn't taking care of our brothers and sisters that need it. So we definitely need that. But look, like, it's our greatest victory to join the army. You just lost Iraq, Afghanistan. You're losing in Ukraine. It's a disaster. Like, none of the wars you've been fighting have even been working. You've just been putting good, honest Americans on the front line. They come back, if they're lucky enough, with PTSD and they're broke and they can't find a job and they're suffering mental health issues. Like, it's just a joke. Nobody wants to get drafted into World War III, and that's why I think they're going to pull a major event very soon. It's going to be one of those flag events, guys, that I'm really, really concerned about. And it reminds me the lies that you get from politicians, the bankers, and all these people. It reminds me of this documentary that I just watched on Sitting Bull. I don't know if you guys know who Sitting Bull is, but he was a very well-known chief and a Lakota leader who was basically killed by the U.S. government after being forced into a concentration camp, essentially, right after the Civil War. And see, what you're told in the history books isn't really the real history. So for example, many children grow up in American schools, they're told that Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, basically fought the Civil War to end slavery. And that was the point of the whole Civil War, was to just end slavery through the Emancipation Proclamation and give people of all colors freedom. That's actually not true at all. A case in point is Sitting Bull. You know what the American government did right after the Emancipation Proclamation and right after the Civil War? Conquered the entire West, destroyed all these people's lives, the native inhabitants, and then basically eradicated them, either through war, deceit, or disease. Now, the deceit, that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because the American government is very good at this. And this is something that Sitting Bull actually talks about in this really great documentary that I just watched, about how the American government would force them into a new way of life, treaties, lie about it, backtrack, and then basically through deception achieve their conquering. And this is exactly what they had done to the Lakota people and all of these great nations. And it's very, very sad. So I'll give you an example. There's a specific example in this beautiful documentary that I'll put up on the screen here in a minute. Can't think of the name of it, where he says the U.S. government had promised to pay the Lakota people while they're on the reservation, which is a concentration camp, by the way. Did the same thing to Japanese Americans during World War II. They were promised a $50,000 annuity, I think paying out like every year for something like 30 years or something like that. It was longer, that was like 50 years. And they were promised that they were going to get money, basically, from the government. This is where the deception is. Well, it turns out not only did the U.S. government break the promise, but they cut it down to like 15 years from like 50 or something like that, and then basically just got rid of it completely and essentially wiped out the entire population. In fact, he was killed, like I said, right around the time the U.S. government was fearing this new kind of emergence of a ghost dance. That was a new religious kind of activity that the populations were engaging in at a time when they were very demoralized and, you know, were being essentially conquered by the USA. Why do I bring this up? Yes, there's a lot of tragedy in history, as we're seeing now. I'm bringing this up is because all of you are being deceived, not only into CBDCs, but also into UBI. Not you, my loyal audience. Let me give you an example. Elon Musk just a couple days ago said there's no such thing as universal basic income. It'll be universal high income. No, that's a lie, and that's a deception. Just like Sitting Bull and his populations over which he looked after were absolutely deceived. You're being deceived by your government now.